We've been getting a lot of questions about performance pay.
One of the key things in implementing performance pay is,
I started this when I was doing like 1.5 million.
how do I even know that I'm performing well?
If you can hit those three things, the average output per crew goes up 37%. That's another thing about performance-based pay systems that most people don't realize is
The real number that everybody needs to be paying attention to is
we see certain scenarios where the front line and even salespeople, they're making more than the owner. The more you can provide an employee with the feeling of they are their own owners of their destiny, it's a great and powerful tool with performance-based pay.
Welcome to Beers with Contractors.
All right, Beers with Contractors community. Happy Thursday to everybody out there. Drake, good to see you, sir. Cheers to you.
cheers.
By the way, Terry laying off on the job today because he obviously, well, for any of those that don't know, the 6 of you out there, Terry is a professor at OSU. He's in their construction science department. He is facilitating graduations today, so he's having to show up for work. However, what that tells me, Drake, is that Terry is pretty much going to be coasting for the next 2 months in between semesters. So you may get more inappropriate texts from him than usual. You may get funny little Facebook reels. And yes, he's already saying, well, when can I come over and have beers and we'll shoot a podcast? And
So what you're saying is we need to have him on a few new research projects
yeah, that's right.
for the podcast.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the communication between one another, have you gotten the new Apple OS update for your phone?
I have the update, 18.4.1, I think.
Yeah, I didn't even see what version it was. It was actually in the middle of this morning while I was in meetings, and I didn't even
Yeah.
realize. I don't know if you've seen this with this new update. I noticed that there's a little yellow microphone that's popping up on the top left part of my screen, and then sometimes it's a red camera. And I was thinking, what in the world's going on there? I must be left my microphone on. No. Go to Control Center. Now the new software updates for privacy reasons, it's letting you know when an application is listening to you through your microphone or using your camera without you noticing.
Okay.
And
Did
it's
you smile?
freakish. Oh, well, it's freaky how much like that thing starts blinking up. And you can go to your Control Center and it'll show you what app is doing that so you can turn off those notifications. But I was like, whoa, Big Brother is like here and like watching and listening. If you force close the app, which is funny, I had like 30 apps open.
You had lots of apps going at one time.
We found a record. It's funny. We had our call center manager, Carrie. She's an amazing person. And well, let's play a game here, Drake. This is the game we played. I want you to open Safari
Okay.
and I want you to just open it. And I want you to tell me how many open tabs you have open in your Safari. And I would love to play this with contractors because I'm sure it's nuts. So how many open tabs do you have in Safari?
Are you going to guess or no?
I'm going to let you tell me.
Okay. 273.
Oh my God, I have 40. 41. Carrie had 678 open tabs.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
That's like, oh my gosh, like close those out. That's like, are you a zero inbox person, Drake?
No.
Oh.
No, I'm not. Maybe someday I aspire to be that.
Dude, I try so hard. I'm not like as bad as my brother. He opened up his email inbox the other day. It was like 4,700 unread. And I'm like, God, that gives me anxiety.
Yeah, that would give me tons of anxiety.
Yeah, I hover around the 5 to 17 unread messages
that's-
every day. So,
Well, that's good.
but anyway, so unique episode today. We don't have Terry, but that's okay. He'll be back for the next one. And excited about some of the guests coming up. So we've been getting a lot of questions from you guys out there in the world about performance pay. And specifically, performance, PER, the number 4, MANCE.io is a product that I created. And this isn't going to be one long infomercial. It's essentially intended to be just from an education perspective on what I've seen around the country that works really well for any type of performance-based incentive for field crews, office staff, all of that. The luxury is I have the data, and I can't mention any names, of course, but we can at least speak about norms that I'm seeing in the industry specific to foundation repair, concrete, fencing, spray foam, heck, even countertop companies, and what they're seeing and how they're utilizing this information to help with retaining employees to help increase output in their crews, as well as just try to create a bonus incentive plan that keeps people in their business and not leaving for a competitor for an extra dollar an hour. So we're going to take a deep dive into some data today because, that's the sexy buzzword is data and statistics, right? We don't want to think about theory, right, Drake?
Well, so it's really like you don't get to see this data, right? You don't know what your competitors' numbers are, what they're paying their crews, unless you listen. And so now
Yeah.
they get like the actual secret deep dive into what your competitors are doing and why maybe they have a little bit of an edge on attracting new people.
Yeah. Well, and also I think it's important to understand why and how production incentives can
Hmm.
help your business because many of us out there in the world, we're competing against large companies owned by private equity. And essentially, a well executed performance based pay system is the ticket to beating the big names in your market. I mean, they obviously have a ton of money to throw around, especially on the eve of an investment fund being fulfilled. And it's
Hmm.
like, boy, they want to burn through that cash. But then towards the end, it gets real tight. And that's our moment to shine as contractors out there. If you've got those massive competitors out there in the market. So,
Yeah. And how to win over your employees' spouses.
yeah, that's right. So,
More to
uh,
come.
yeah. So, Drake, do you know how I got into this weird world, by the way, of like software development and performance?
I figured you had a problem that you needed to solve, and you just geeked out and OCD, ADHD into a rabbit hole one day.
Yeah. Well, funny story. Yes, that's very, very close. You know me well, Drake. So,
I
yeah,
listen.
yeah. There are days when I wake up and I'm like, how the hell did I end up in the software world? Like every other day, it's like that.
Mhm.
But here I am. And actually, I love it because several years ago, I sought out to create a product to fix a problem that ironically was not really fixing any problem. It was just trying to carbon copy some of the solutions I had already made. But my problems were not, so in high demand as other companies needed. But through that process of developing it and spending a ton of money paying some other company to do it, I just wanted to know how that process works. And this is where the ADHD comes in, Drake. And those that know my wife, Sydney, by the way, this is what's funny. I am a shitty driver on land. So I've always wanted a boat, but her excuse is listen, if you can't drive a car on land safely, I'm not getting on the water with you on a boat. So that was out. Drake, you a golf guy?
I've tried.
Okay, good. Yeah, me, I destroy golf courses. I am horrible at golf, and it hurts my soul to see how beautiful it is. And I'm just
Hmm.
up there hacking grass, hitting houses with golf balls. So I don't golf. So I don't have a lot of hobbies, is what I'm trying to get to.
Hmm.
I just naturally wanted to know how that process worked of like, hey, how do you deploy a software? So hopefully this is inspiration to any of you guys out there. I am 41 right now, and this is when I was about just turning 39. And you can learn new skills, to be clear. Like, if you really want to focus and solve a problem, you can learn anything out there. As I like to say, every billionaire and bum has access to the same information with these little things in our pockets. I went down the YouTube rabbit hole and learned HTML, JavaScript, PHP programming language, and I just wanted to fix a problem and know how that went. So we have done performance-based plans for 16 years in all sorts of different variations. And I love all of my employees, but we have a large amount of our employees that are Gen Z. We've got a lot, they're millennials and obviously Gen Xers and boomers, but the large group of our employees are Gen Z and millennials, and they just don't understand math and spreadsheets. And by the way, I would say that for any contractor listening out there, the guys that are out there doing the work, it's not their job to know how spreadsheets work. They're the craftsmen, they're the artisans of our trade, and you can't ask them to be mathematicians and spreadsheet jockeys. It's just not realistic. Now, granted, most of us that can do both, we typically run a business or own a business, or we were forced to learn spreadsheets. So just acknowledging the fact that employees don't understand your bonus system is paramount. And that's what I found. So I created a budgeting app that was intended to gather the data that we had set up for their bonus and then allow them to clock in and out for it And then that just shows them clearly in real-time data what their bonus systems are. It was meant to be budget. Now fast forward, and what we have today is over 630 crews all across the country using this. And they're very clearly being able to see what their program is. But by the way, to be clear, you can do this on your own. And hopefully with the information we provide you with today, you can do it on your own. And I'm happy to share my spreadsheets that I used to use. Even seen some modified ones from folks around the country that are actually pretty good. But there's a few key features that I want to make sure that everybody has before pushing out like any type of performance incentive plan, either with their frontline, their managers, or in-office staff. So that's what happened is I created this on the side and poof, people were like, hey, can I start using that? And I'm like, well, damn, I didn't build it for that. But now we've got a full development team, which is much smarter than I am. And honestly, they made it look a lot better, but I still got it off the ground. And I could have saved a lot of money just by doing it that way. But anyways, so.
Well, Will, just for context for everybody, when you started doing performance pay, you said 16 years ago, what were some of the size of your company, dollars, revenue, employees, crews, stuff like that? And how does that help you grow, and what does it look like more like today?
Yeah, so actually that's a great question because I think it's really important to understand that I started this when I was doing like 1.5 million. The problem that I was trying to solve by giving incentives to my frontline is specific to understanding, number one, it's a competitive job market out there. And I want to keep the guys that I've spent training for so long happy. Because it was like every 3 months, there was like, hey, so-and-so offered me a job for more money. And, I love you. I love working for you, but it's more money. And I mean, that's a real thing. And if any business owner out there gets offended by an employee saying, hey, I really need more money, like you got to remove the emotion out of it because in most cases, there's some real information there. And that also means that it could be because of their skill set, demand of their income at home. Hell, look, inflation. I mean, all of that, we're all battling it, including the front line. So I was also doing it because I wanted to reward the employees that were just killing it out there, helping customers, those employees that show up on time, they get jobs done, the trucks are clean. I wanted to reward that. And the best way to do it on the front line is attach your performance-based pay system as much to the cost of goods sold of the company. So let's break down cost of goods sold because a lot of people get this confused. In most home service companies, you have your direct labor. Those are the labor hours that are directly tied to a job, meaning you can invoice that to Mrs. Jones or Dr. Smith or whoever your customer is. Then you have materials associated with that project. Then if you do have salespeople, you want to put sales commissions in there. And then any subcontracting or rental fees. Those are your cost of goods sold. After that, whatever's left over is your gross profit margin. So on the front line, if you can directly tie as much to the budget amount of your labor and cost of goods sold, like you're going to see massive benefits there. That's what I started with, was focusing on, hey, I really need my labor to be 13%. Now, of course, overtime is a killer of that. You know this, Drake. It's like, it's like, all right, well, we've got this mindset of like, well, I really need more money. So why don't I just show up 15 minutes earlier and stay an hour or two later each day. And then by the end of the week, I'm getting time and a half. And gosh, states like California, for example, where they have daily overtime and then they have double overtime for every hour over 12 hours. That's a massive amount of like ongoing direct labor. And also you're getting hit with workers' comp on that too. So Sydney and I, we were just running it through spreadsheets for years. We think we're doing well because it's like, hey, we're rewarding efficiencies and that information's coming through. And essentially we're taking time card data, putting it in, weighing it against the budget of the job. When they were under, voila, they got the remainder in a bonus. And this is kind of the cheat code. When you can lock in performance pay for your company, it essentially transforms a variable based expense, meaning you don't know if it's going to be 11% or 18% or somewhere in between each month. It takes it and makes it a fixed expense. Every single month, you know exactly where it's going to be. And that way, 2 weeks after the P&L drops, You're not sitting there thinking, oh, crap, what was our labor? Oh, wait, it's that? And you're not surprised because it should be right where you set it as crews get more familiar with it.
And so it sounds like, one of the key things in implementing performance pay from like an employee retention standpoint is, hey, we're shifting the responsibility from they left saying, hey, I'm not making enough. And instead, now you're flipping it and going, hey, I'm in control of how much I make
Mm.
based on the variables and how hard I work. And so it kind of like shifts the responsibility a little bit into how they can do that.
Yeah, if you can let any employee, and I'm sure well, I know you owned your own business, Drake,
Hmm?
but also like you've had other, you know, business ventures that you were the employee there, right?
Hmm.
So, when you worked at those other locations, did you feel like you had any control as an owner, or did you feel at all like an owner in the
Uh,
company?
Not, I'm a little, but not as much as I'm used to now that I have ownership.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say. What you did is you didn't feel like it, so you went and you started your own business, right? So
Hmm.
I believe that the more you can make or provide an employee with the feeling of they are their own owners of their destiny without all the risk of owning the business, it's a great and powerful tool with performance-based pay. Now, the other interesting part about that is when you remove all the responsibilities of the time in the financials and inventory management, all these other frustrating things that business owners have to deal with, it's a win-win. So then they don't go start their own business because
Hmm.
it's like, no, why would I? Like I'm making enough. Hell, we see certain scenarios where the frontline and even salespeople, they're making more than the owner in certain growth spurts of the company. But yeah, to that point, Drake, because I get to, if you are planning on starting a performance pay or bonus system, no matter what the position in the company, no matter what the scenario is, what I have found three things to be very true with all employees, and this is with all of the 600 plus crews around the country using our system, is number one, specifically with frontline, they need to see what their actual dollars per hour rate is. No, what I mean by that is if a crew is making $20 an hour, but they got $100 bonus, well, it's just $100. It's discretionary. It's in the ether and it's spent before it's ever received. But when an employee can say, hey, I'm making $20 an hour, but after all of my hard work and pay, I can see in real time that I'm actually making $32 an hour, that's where a lot of frontline employees, they set a lot of value. But also, everything around us in the world is measured on dollar per hour rate, especially in frontline. So when you look at a job application, it tells you what your expected dollar per hour rate should be. It doesn't say, here's your suspected dollar per hour rate, and you may get like $100 spiff and a pizza party. That's not going to get anybody to apply
Yeah.
to your job. So that's the first one. The second one is like real time. And you've heard the stories, Drake, where it's like, the attention span of an adult is getting just about as low of like 9 seconds. And I think the comparative is that's even shorter than a goldfish. By the way, what were we talking about? I'm just kidding. the And by the way, thank you to your 6 listeners out there that are still listening to us this far in to the episode. But we are like instant gratification machines as human beings, and we need that information in real time. And by the way, if you want to use a spreadsheet to calculate bonus systems, and as I said before, well, heck, hit me up at performance.io, PER, the number 4, MANCE.io. Hit the contact me, just put in the notes like you heard about it on the podcast. I will send you spreadsheets, and they are a powerful tool. But man, you got to show that on a daily basis. And I think that cadence is really important for the employees to see like, hey, wow, we really won today. Or, man, we didn't do as good, but what's the game plan for today? And then
Hmm.
they can get that daily dose of dopamine and instant gratification and get that pushed in because they don't know if it's just here's my time and I'm going to make a bonus. And that's where it becomes an entitlement, not a bonus or performance pay. When that check arrives, it's not going to be what they expected. And then that's where the seeds of distrust settle in your company. So, by the way, Drake, have you ever had a paycheck that was just right on spot with the money that you were hoping to make?
It's very rare.
Yeah.
It's very rare.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, mine from you work.
Oh, yeah. Thanks. Yeah. I'm glad you're satisfied. But like, I've never opened up a damn paycheck in my life and thought, damn, that's too much money, right? We
Yep.
always expect it to be more money. And then
Mhm.
what happens is, and this is something that I've learned from all of the companies around the country and the foremen and the helpers is, if they work their butts off, because man, it's more than just going out there and telling the guys and gals to work harder for no return, right? But if they do, and then they don't see that return, it translates into two different mindsets. Number one, you're taking money from my pocket. So it becomes a me versus you mentality of the employee to the company. The second thing is, I don't see that I'm receiving value for my time equivalent to what my effort was. So I'm got one foot out the door just waiting. And the latter it involves less of like the you betrayed me mindset, but it's real because the employees need to see that. So interesting thing. And Drake, I'll tell you a funny story. The third one that I find to be the most important in pushing some type of performance-based bonus system to any employee is for years we used to try to push like the understanding and the math behind it and how you arrive at it. And a lot of times people will get that and it's fine, but we have a certain part of our product that we created that allows an employee to go backwards in time and see over the course of 6 months what were their bonuses. They could see the ups and downs with seasonal trends, and they could see their adjusted hourly rate right then, depending on how they set it. Well, we were pushing some updates and that page went down. And it wasn't some big emergency. Everybody's payroll is fine. It was just it would load and nobody could really see the data. And I told my team, I was like, this is actually an easy fix. We can take care of this, but I don't really know how many people look at that. And within an hour, I got 38 phone calls from foremen all over the country saying, hey, my metrics page is down. And the funny thing is I was like, oh, yeah, it's fine. We're going to fix it. Simple fix, expect it to be done in the next 4 hours. But after about 5 calls, I said, why is this page so important to you? And the answer just is nuts because I wasn't expecting it. Like employees to have a great performance-based pay plan, it's not only for them, it has to be transparent to their families at home and specifically their spouses. Because if you've built and put in all the effort to push a great incentive plan for your teams out there and they trust it, their spouses have to trust it as well. Because they're going to say, hey, we're behind on bills. I know you love your job, but my cousin Jimmy down the street has got a job paying $29 an hour in an air-conditioned warehouse and you're making 25. You should go get a job there. And obviously, well, we're men. We like to act like we're tough, but when it comes to the wives in the house making financial decisions and telling us, hey, you need to jump ship because we got bills to pay. Like, unfortunately, a lot of folks, they make that decision and they leave your company ultimately, even though they didn't realize they were making more money working at your company, which goes back to the first one. You didn't translate it to them in a dollar per hour rate because the rest of the world is translating that over. So isn't that just crazy though, Drake? It took me, out of all the years I've done it, it took me 15 years before learning that.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, that seems like that's where the real breakdown, or one of the real breakdowns between the spreadsheet that's updated when I get, round to it versus the software that's automated. That's where you really start to see the difference because it is like everybody expects when I log into my bank account, my online app, I see how much money I have right now. If I walk across the street to a gas station, I spend money, I see that money come out of my account right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so like you can do it different ways, but having that, I mean, that's what we're used to. We're used to instant feedback. We put out a post, we get likes right now. Like,
Yeah.
how much are you making right now?
Tradies, running your small business can be demanding. You got suppliers you got to work with. You're managing crews. Hell, you're chasing sales. It's a lot to take in. Listen, if you want to grow your business, you got to stop working in it and you got to start working on it. So that's where my friends at Foundation Rescue Supply come in. You're not just getting foundation repair products and waterproofing products and air quality control products. With their nationwide distribution, you're getting a partner who knows how to help you scale. And that's why I use them. The Foundation Rescue Supply team has industry knowledge that'll help make your life easier. You get the tools, the trainings, the systems that you need to move the needle. You want your sales team to close more leads? Done, because they have the proven process for that. You need your crews to work smarter, not harder? Done. Their installation training will get you out there and rocking and rolling in the field. With Foundation Rescue Supply, you're not just buying materials here, you're buying a better business system that they have helped create. And you sell more, you install more, and you grow your team. So the bottom line is this: you get best industry pricing, you get field productivity on track, and you get more revenue out of everybody on your team. So this is your chance to step up, scale up, and thrive. If you are ready to make that happen, head to foundationrescuesupply.com, check out their catalog, and speak to my friends, their team, how you can take beyond the products with your company with Foundation Rescue Supply.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's funny, Drake. that You mentioned that. So, have you ever read into the psychology on why Fortnite is so successful as a game?
I have not read specifically.
Okay, so like
but I love
probably
this stuff. So yeah.
our 5 or 6 listeners are like, "What the hell are we talking about?" Well, we're going
Mhm.
into Fortnite. So, and this is funny. I saw a study on this, and it was done by a team of psychologists. And the reason it is the gamification of it and the effects of achievements. Have you ever played that game at all, Drake?
I know about it. I've never played it.
Okay, so I played it with my younger son. I get my ass kicked every time I play. But you can literally take an axe and knock down a wall, and it'll be like achievement XP. You can
Yep.
just jump around on staircases, and then eventually, poof, you got an achievement. Here's 10 XP for being a good jumper. and it's constant like dopamine drips of achievement and XP building, and it's like confetti shooting out and all that. So it's like no matter what it is, you are constantly getting some gamification in return for what you should be doing anyway. And that could put that as a little asterisk. You could have actually a great performance-based system. It's translating to dollar per hour. It's easy to translate to folks at home, and it's in real time or close to it. If you want to throw jet fuel on your performance-based pay system, you can gamify it, and guys and gals will move mountains to get to the top of a confined list within your company. Hell, we have a top 10 list that goes out every month by industry, and it shows the top performing crews and their install rates. When we started our top 10 as just a little fun exercise last July of 2024, the first industry we started in was foundation repair and concrete. If you installed maybe 89,000, you made the top 10. This last month, as of April 2025, you didn't make the top 10 even if you didn't clear 185,000.
Whoa.
On average, the top 10 crews in that specific industry install $201,000 a month, and they generate over $900 per man hour. And most of them, all they want is to be on that list.
Yeah. That makes sense though.
I mean, yeah,
that-
and it's like,
that prize.
well, to be clear, like I have employees that are on that list, and when they get knocked down a few ranks, they are pissed. And I'm like, Alex, this is one of my foremen, by the way. Alex,
Yeah.
I love Alex. He installed $2.1 million for me last year. His crew is amazing. Customers love them, happy people. And I mean, it's awesome. The work is good quality. He's like pissed that he went down from like second to sixth. I'm like, Alex, dude, you still installed $207,000 last month. And he goes, I know, but I need to be number one. And I'm like, you're going to make good money anyway. And he goes, it's a pride issue, Will.
Yep.
There's no like belt. There's no plaque.
It's-
It's just a social media post. That's it. And guys will move mountains to get in that. So there's a little asterisk. If you can gamify it, holy smokes. We see companies do this all over the country where they they have dashboards up in the office showing like who's installing the most, who's making the most performance pay, who's generating the highest dollar per man hour. And guys will sit there over coffee in the morning arguing back at one another about like who's going to win. Mind you, they argue for a very short amount of time because they know that the clock's ticking. So they bitch at one another for a little bit, then they get the hell out of there and they get to work. And it's just so funny to see.
Well, if you think about that, like, isn't that to a certain extent, that's what we all want, is to know that we can win
Yeah.
at life.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
honestly, like, really. And we want to know that we can win at life. We can make enough to provide the life that we want for ourselves and our family. And we want other people to see that we're winning at life,
Yeah.
especially on social media.
I'm forgetting. I'm going to draw this out, Trey. You probably know it, or maybe we'll look it up. What Maslow's hierarchy of need, right? I know that the
Oh,
bottom
yeah.
one is food, water, shelter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's pull this up. But eventually it gets to community, right? And I think that's maybe the third.
Yeah, and then it's self-actualization, if I remember right. Yeah, so psychological needs, air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, personal security, employment, resources, health, love and belonging, friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection. Esteem,
Yeah.
which would be respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, and freedom. And then
That's what that,
self-actualization, desire to be the most that one can be. So,
Yeah.
like,
So-
literally, like, if you think about how many jobs do we have where it's like, okay, we've got our psychological needs, where we're like, that's what we're striving for. Okay, cool. But everybody stops there, right? Maybe I know that I'm safe. Okay, cool. I've got that. But that doesn't necessarily help with the top three, other than being the foundation that you try and build those off of.
Yeah. Well, that's so interesting because we talked about this on our podcast a few times, a hierarchy of need.
Mhm.
I should have memorized it by now, but you know, I'm a beer in. Give me a break. But it's interesting. Like if you are a business owner out there and you have no bonus incentive plan, like you're constantly in this rabbit wheel of just like losing people, guys wanting raises without any added value. And then, of course, poor quality work, low outputs, and higher indirect overhead costs. It is purgatory for a home service company that is sitting in that seat. So it's super important that when you establish a performance-based system, it's interesting that we just recap that, Drake, because it shows good performance-based systems are pushing people up the hierarchy of need. And ones that don't have performance-based systems, they're stuck in the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of need. It's like they're
Exactly.
constantly struggling for psychological security, food, water, shelter, hand to mouth, overtime. Give me the overtime. And it's like, no, like a good bonus system. By the way, I know a lot of people are probably out there thinking like, well, if you just put out bonus systems, but I'm just paying my employees more and then my costs are going up.
And this is why, right? So if you think about it, like once you get to, and it was an interesting study that I learned. I was really happy when I learned this early on in life, is there are studies that show that once a person gets above their basic level of need, right? So once their top two things are met from physiological and safety, once those two things are met, the marginal happiness that they get from more money after those needs are met, it's very minimal. But that's why oh, well, I just pay them more doesn't work, because you're not tapping into the esteem. How does anybody else know and value the fact that I'm performing well? How do I even know that I'm performing well? Because I have nothing to compare anything against. I just make a higher hourly wage. Now I'm comparing myself against other hourly wages. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, when you have that base, and it is kind of funny about like the hourly wage thing. Interesting story is in my market, obviously the listeners that listen to us know I'm in Oklahoma City. Every spring, obviously, things start to warm up, the grass starts to grow, and the landscapers fire up the lawnmowers. And guess who comes knocking for my employees? Is all them landscapers. And by the way, the private equity competitors, everybody else. And I had a guy approach, by the way, this was Alex, the crew that he approached. My highest installing crew of my company. It was like, if you could have picked one mark, you picked the worst mark. They said, hey, listen, we need landscapers. If you come work for us, we'll pay you $5 more an hour. And the guys were like, huh, really? So they pull up their app. And this is why real-time data is so important in performance-based systems. And they pulled up their metrics page. They were like, well, last year, all of us made about $62 an hour. So you're going to pay us $67 an hour? And that guy said, wait a minute, what? You got paid what? And then, so now that guy works for us. He left the landscaping company. But get this, my labor by percentage as a business owner is 11% with Alex's crew. And it's 11% every month because I've shown them, I showed them the goal line. And I didn't move the goalpost, by the way. I showed them the goal line and said, this is what you can make if you hit it at this threshold. And they just kept chunking away at it. Over the last 2 years, their performance has not plateaued. Like their output just continues to increase. And we do impulsive job site visits all the time. And their job sites are safe. They're efficient. Customers love it. The workmanship's great. So that's another thing about performance-based pay systems that most people don't realize is over the course of time, the output, and Drake, I pulled this from our system just last week. The average output for a company, whether you have a performance-based system or not, if you can hit those 3 things that we discuss, and we'll give you the asterisk of the 4th, if you can gamify. So let me repeat this. If you can make it insanely transparent for dollar per hour rate, you can make it instantly known. You can make it transparent for their families to understand. And if you can pepper in some gamification, the average output per crew goes up 37%. By the way, I was shocked. I had to dive into the numbers and be like, that sounds embellished. But no, over the course of 6 months, your crews can install 37% more. Now, from the accountants out there, put that into perspective. Same 3 or 2 or even 1 person, same truck, same tools, same job, and you have all the less fuel overhead of having to go buy new equipment and trucks to keep adding people to the fleet. I mean, most of our crews install double, meaning in my company, they install double than most companies out there in the country that don't have a performance incentive plan. So it's nuts, the output. So that means I have less trucks on the road, less fuel going into those trucks, less tires needing to be replaced, less property and casualty insurance, less tools to purchase. And this is where you can compete against the big names. And we see this. Actually, I told you listeners out there, I wasn't going to say any names, but I have permission to say this person's name. Corey Parks. You remember Corey?
Yep.
Corey Parks owns an incredible company, one of my favorite companies in North Carolina. They have 3 crews, and they're competing against companies that are doing 40, 50 million a year in that Charlotte metro market. But their crews, those 3 little tiny crews, install over $200,000 almost every single month. So they're putting in nearly double of the crews that are playing with the big dogs. So then that competitor pisses off their employees and they leave. They come knocking at Corey's door and they see the money that could be made there and the culture that's been built around really performance-based pay. And it is now becoming a recruiting tool for his company. And he's taking now employees that have been trained by a competitor, because Drake, well, if you had to train somebody in low voltage or, IT or, internet providers, it's like, well, all right, let's understand what a Cat 6 cable is and all that. It's a pain in the ass to train employees.
Yeah.
If you can get them out of the box already trained to at least 90% of what the work is, man, just let them run.
Yeah. And then motivate them, because that's the big thing right now is everybody's talking about the unemployment rate and how low it is. The real number that everybody needs to be paying attention to is the workforce participation rate, because that is where all the opportunity is because we have a whole bunch of dudes sitting on their butts that aren't motivated. You let them be motivated to go out there and do something and make money and win at life. There's your access to extra labor.
That's actually kind of a neat little segue. And this doesn't have a lot of data, Drake, but this is a little bit more on the social aspect of what I love about what I'm doing, but also the heartstring side. So obviously blue collar tradespeople, foremen, install guys, technicians, they kind of get a bad rap in the social hierarchy of our world, right? They're like, they're
Yeah.
the grunts, they're dirty, they got dirt under their fingernails, things like that. Dude, I see more rich installers doing foundation repair, concrete, fencing, spray foam, hell, granite countertops. These are guys making over $100,000 a year because they know that they have a skill set that is in demand. They are incentivized through a very well thought out bonus program, and they're just rinsing and repeating, and they are loving life. I get to talk to these folks all around the country and Canada, and even we've just started with some Australian companies.
No,
Those
nice.
guys are really fun to talk to. The funny thing is like they're buying houses, they're buying trucks, they're making investments. And like the year to date, we are in May right now. We have processed over $6 million in bonus out to employees through our system
Wow.
year to date. Now, the average labor rate for all of those companies, for those controllers out there wondering, well, where did it go? The average labor rate is 13.1% across all companies because you've set the benchmark and said, hey, this is where it is. And we met those 4 criterias before. So that's just something important to understand. But I love talking to guys out in the field and just hearing their success. And I talked to a guy the other day in South Dakota. I'm like, I fixed with a technical issue or technical question he had. And I was like, oh, cool. Well, hold on, Wes. Like, how's life? And he goes, yeah, man, we're good. Just bought a new house. Got another kid on the way. Just got me a nice F-250. By the way, paid cash. Didn't.
Oh,
Yeah. And
nailed
then
it.
I'm like, wow. Like, I was like, do you have a good month? He goes, man, I had a good 6 months. Like, he's just killing it. Like, on average, that team installs like $160,000 a month consistently. They take home $8,000 plus in bonus, and their labor is 10%. 10.
Oh,
And it's like, dude, these guys in South Dakota, they know how to throw and go, man. They are rock stars. And I mean, I don't know about you, Drake. Have you been to the Dakotas?
no, not
I
in a while.
I bet you a brand new F-250 is quite the status symbol to
Oh
folks in
yeah.
South Dakota. Like, yeah,
Oh
man,
yeah.
just pull that up on the curb. Let that thing, like, walk into the bar with a swagger. Like,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
but anyway, that's the favorite thing is talking to guys around the country.
Well, you're just restoring the middle class. Like
Yeah.
that's like you're restoring the middle class, which let's be real, like the heart of what made America great was the middle class. And if you just by tweaking your performance system
Hmm.
can work to restore middle class jobs and give them that pride and that self-esteem of being a part of, living the American dream, what
Yeah.
more could you want?
So this is probably, now that I've gotten to play my little social card and actually explain what gets me up every morning, because that is my favorite thing in the world. We should talk about a few things like the frequently asked questions that people have, like, well,
Mm.
what about quality control? Are guys going to just totally like go out there and do crappy work because they can make performance pay? Number one, by law, there's certain parameters you have to be careful with. So let's just break that down. And I get to work with Department of Labor Infrastructure, like payroll laws, all of that around the country. States are all different. And by the way, Drake, never did I think I would wake up one day and be like, man, I get to read about payroll laws in the state of New York, but it's my job now. And honestly, the states have made some of this so complicated for business
Mhm.
owners that you don't know like where the blind spot is until you make it around the corner and you get
Oh yeah.
mugged by an audit. But if an employee were to come in under budget, and we see this all the time with existing systems before I get to working with a company, that you can never go below the hourly and overtime rates of that employee.
Mm.
Now, there are some Department of Labor exclusions if you cross multiple states that help with. It's specifically tied to like freight companies, the ones that have to go from state to state that you can exclude overtime, which is an interesting thing. I never knew it existed until I found this out, but you can't go below hourly and overtime rates. You have to
Okay.
default to that by specific measure. But it's also one of those where if there is bonus, you've got to take out future callbacks out of the existing week's performance pay to make sure that behavior is correct. So my company, we have a rule. If we have to go back to a house within 6 months of a job installed, and by the way, it could be faster depending on your industry. We see some companies at 2 weeks and others at a year, that the labor that's attributed to that job comes out of performance pay because the performance pay was already paid. And that quality control measure is really important to stick to your guns on that to ensure great quality. Also, collection rates are a very good metric for knowing that good work is being done. We do random job site visits, but also if we see that somebody has a lower collection percentage, well, it's typically because they're not doing good work because, well, unhappy customers typically don't pay. Unless your foreman is 6'4", 300 pounds and incredibly intimidating, he could do a terrible job and I'd still pay him because he scares the shit out of me.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, like quality assurance is something that also happens from a leadership perspective and holding guys accountable. Some other ones more specifically is like Department of Labor compliance for audits. So it's really important to understand that like that data has to live somewhere. And if you're clearing out the spreadsheet and resetting it every week for new data in the trigger of an audit, like that information needs to be recalled. And it's like if you are using a spreadsheet, it's totally fine. Just make sure you're saving each billable or payroll cycle somewhere for audit. And that actually is a little asterisk to that one is like how many hands are in the cookie jar in your bonus plan? If there's a lot of data manipulation and there's no breadcrumbs showing where that manipulation is, it can get you in a lot of hot water with the Department of Labor. Last one is workers' comp, which there are certain areas around the country that don't have to deal with this, but making sure that as you're creating a bonus incentive program that you're not getting penalized on your workers' comp for the bonus or performance pay, because that's obviously going to inflate your workers' comp costs, but making sure those are class right and not letting your workers' company tag that bonus or performance pay to that is paramount. So it's huge. But yeah, based on that, big overview. Drake, any weird random questions you can think of before we close out for today?
The thing that sticks out to me is, thinking of the vision of it, it's like, okay, so if I'm a company and I'm frustrated because of the variability in my labor, right? I want to invest more in marketing. I want to invest more in buying a new truck. I want to invest more in whatever. I want to just have something steady in my pocket. But my labor variability is all over the place. This helps get rid of that, right?
Yeah.
So imagine if it just stuck to a certain percentage and you were able to actually do the hockey stick where it goes up and to the right, where you're able to actually see your crew's performance go up. You don't have to worry about your labor having variations because now I'm able to make financial decisions. I'm able to know what I can invest in marketing, invest in new truck, invest in new business, invest in new leads, and get to have happier employees.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like kind of a win.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And by the way, that's just the kind of call it minimum threshold. If you can get that nailed down, let's just describe don't let me cry, Drake, but let's just talk about the basic problems in construction business ownership and why, if you're out there and you're listening and you shed a tear, I'm sorry. I know I've been there. I'm still there every once in a while. Like guys not showing up on time or guys just not showing up at all. Guys not, showing up for interviews and nobody responding, people slacking on the job, unnecessary purchases at the Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards trips, bad quality workmanship or jobs going over time and budget. Like, let's just put those into a box. Now let's get to the next part. We have higher cost of goods sold. We have higher indirect overhead because of low install rates. We have high workers' comp because of tons of overtime. And then now we're going to get into, well, I didn't make any money as a business owner in the net profit column. So now let's just take all of those and put that into another box. And then the third one is this. I want to do well by my employees, but I can't afford to do it. I want to give employee benefits, but I can't afford to do it. I want to take distributions or even a profit share for my employees, but I can't afford to do it. And that's the third one. Performance-based pay fixes all three of those. That's a lot of problems, and it's fixing all of those. And the cool thing is once it fixes those over time, and I want to be clear, this has been what I've learned. 16 years of doing it, I struggled with all of those still up until the last 3 years when I started to really nail down the psychology that employees need to understand where the goal line is, where the winning points are, all of that. And it's just been super, super powerful. And I never expected to have so much data to pull from. And the good news is I get to take that data and reshare it with my companies that I work with and be like, hey, this is what we're seeing. And then they make better decisions. Heck, we found companies incentivizing Google reviews. I mean, what they call moments of magic. I saw a company that rewards moments of magic. So they get the employees get an extra $100 an hour, which translates into hourly pay. When an employee does such a good job that the customer mails in a handwritten thank you letter. And it has to be specific. Like, you made such an impression that they took the time to handwrite a letter and mail it to the office, to the owner, and say thank you. And they frame those and they put them around the office. And it's just so cool to see that. Like, you can incentivize all sorts of things. And hell, we didn't even get into managers. Sorry, Drake. I went off into tangents, like call center folks, managers, salespeople, like all of those incentive plans, like they match the same criteria. And as we bring in younger managers, employees into those departments, the same applies. But yes, so we're coming up on our time. Drake, this has been fun. And also, this is where the shameless plug comes in. And to be clear, email me. You know, you can hit me up at williamwalkerblake.com. You can hit me up at performance.io, and we'll put the links down in the bottom. And email me directly or fill out the form fill, tag me directly about the podcast, and I'll shoot you any resources. Happy to show you some of the data that I pulled without disclosing company information. But if this seems like a good fit for you guys, would love to show you. Obviously, I don't do a lot of the demos, but I'm mainly on the onboarding side, so I work directly with business owners and their accountants and their production managers, but happy to give you guys more of a glimpse into the wild world that I somehow stumbled myself into, Drake. But otherwise, to all you tradies out there, I appreciate you. Drake, I appreciate you, sir. You did a good stand-in for Terry.
Thank you,
And
sir.
we will be back next Thursday. We get Terry back next Thursday. Otherwise, we'll see you next week on Beers with Contractors. See you guys.
See you, everybody.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Beers with Contractors. We hope you enjoyed our chat as much as we did. Before we say our final goodbyes, a friendly reminder. Beers with Contractors encourages responsible drinking. If you choose to enjoy a beverage during our time together, please do so in moderation and only if you're of legal drinking age in your country or state. Furthermore, the advice and insights shared in this podcast are for informational purposes only. Always consult with professionals and experts in your field, and be sure to follow local laws and regulations regarding licensing and permits. We're here to help, entertain, and inspire, but your safety and compliance are important. So, as you head out into the world of construction and contracting, remember to build responsibly and make decisions that stand the test of time. Thanks for joining us today. We'll catch you on the next episode of Beers with Contractors. Until then, cheers to your success.